Okay. Sorry about that. I think they have it figured out here at the county building now. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Carrasco Road Improvements and Corridor Extension Phase A-B study. Today's presentation will be somewhat of a workshop, so we'll get moving on that for you. So let me introduce you a little bit to the team here. We have Wesley Hooper with Eddy County. We have Stantic, you have myself and Dave Maxwell. We have Clay Kuntz and Aoife Malone as well. And with Kim, we have Matt Mathis and Jessica. If you look at the top of your screen here, you will see that we have a website for this project. So you're welcome to visit the website there at any time. And at the very top of your screen, you're going to see our agenda. So you'll know where we are in the presentation by noting where the underline is on the agenda, and that'll give you a feel for where we are. It is somewhat of a long presentation, so we'll try to make it go fast, and it will be interactive, so you will have to provide some of your input to us. Okay, on this slide, what I want to show you here is the corridor that we are studying. You see segment 1 in red and segment 2 in a light green and segment 3 in purple. Segment 1 is currently being worked on, and it's not a part of this project, but it is part of the corridor study in itself. Our next slide here will show you how this part of the corridor fits into an overall plan here. Eddy County has been, since the mid-2000s, Eddy County and the city of Carlsbad have endeavored to form a loop around the city of Carlsbad. So this portion of the presentation is only that bottom red part, which completes the whole loop that the county has been working on. So where are we in our study right now? Last time we met, the bigger arrow you see there pointing to the circle at the where it says here, we are here. Last time that arrow was a little bit further to the left, where we were just beginning and presenting the thoughts of the study and just getting input from people. So we've moved a little bit further along the way on that circle, and we do have some alternatives now, and hopefully by next time we will have moved into the B circle, the phase B circle. So the initial evaluation of alternatives is where we're at, and that establishes the need for an action, which we will present to you a purpose to need. Then we'll give you the range of potential alternatives that achieve the need, and we'll start to eliminate alternatives that are clearly not feasible, and we need your help in that. So that's part of the workshop that we'll be doing for you. So now I'll let Matt Mathis speak to the NEPA his part of the NEPA process.
On this screen. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Mathis. As Gabby mentioned, I'm the project manager or the operations manager for Kim. Kim is responsible for the NEPA process on this project. So all this planning that we're doing all falls within that process to check the NEPA box. Some of the stuff we've got to do is as we move forward, once we determine an alignment, the route that we want to take with this project, we'll conduct field surveys. So looking for any kind of impacts to the habitat, whether it be wildlife, whether it be flora. We got to look at we go right there.
Wildlife.
Okay. Yeah. So wildlife, we also need to look at other issues, cultural issues, different things like that. And then we got to look for migratory birds. We have to conduct cave car surveys. There's also some sensitive plants in the area that we've got to conduct surveys for to make sure we're not going to impact individual plants. We'll do a determination on whether there's wetlands in the area that we need to avoid. Essentially a whole environmental suite of surveys that will be conducted to determine impacts, and if there are impacts that we need to avoid with this project moving forward.
Thank you, Matt. So on the purpose and need, every project that we're going to pursue federal funding on, we have to have a purpose and need. And it's a bit wordy, so I won't read it verbatim for you, but the purpose in itself is to improve the safety, air quality, capacity, fluidity, and the linkage of the Eddy County loop. And we're going to try and complete that loop. We're also going to see how we can enhance economic development. And then the needs fall after that. Why do we have a purpose? Well, we need to decrease truck traffic and congestion within the city of Carlsbad. And that was one of the driving points. And the loop that I showed you earlier, that will keep traffic fluid on the route. And this presentation will be on the website, so you'll be able to go back and look at this. So some of the features that we've looked at so far, right now what you see there is our hydrology map. So where you see the blue, those are some arroyos, and there's also a portion that goes from the north to the south from the top of the page towards the right side of your screen there. That's the Southern Canal that feeds a lot of the farmland in the area. The other one that goes from the left to the right to the top of the screen there, that one is a cast draw, and the light blue areas are FEMA flood zone areas. What you see in this one is a very interesting features that no one had really noticed before because it hadn't been a problem. But this is the geotech investigation, which we've done very lightly so far. We're looking for depressions due to the karst area that we have here. And we did find one there in section 18. You see a depression there. That could possibly be a sinkhole. To the north of that, there's a few others that are incredibly visible here, but those could possibly be some karst veins that go up that we're definitely going to have to investigate. And you'll see also in section 22, 21, you see some depressions there, but we're not going to be in that area at all. The one that is of concern to us is the one in section 18. On this screen, what you're seeing here is the Carlsbad Irrigation District canals. So all of the turquoise colored lines that you see here are ditches that are in the area. And I know these are of importance to a lot of the public that's there. I don't know that it's as important to the stakeholders other than CID, but it is important to the ranchers and farmers in the area. So next, I'll have Clay Coons discuss the roadway safety and traffic.
Thank you, Gabby. So as part of the project development process, traffic and safety is a critical component of the project. And I want to just go over a little summary of how we approach this from a crash and safety standpoint and from a traffic standpoint. So we collected the 5-year crash data for the corridor, and the corridor study limits with respect to the traffic and crashes is kind of a triangle shaped. It's on the north end, the Y 62 180 and 285 intersection, down both legs of 62 180 and 285 down to the project, through the project Carrasco, and the intersections within that, the key intersections. So we collect the data, and then we analyze the crashes by severity, by location, where are they actually occurring, and we'll show a couple of charts here in a minute to kind of highlight where the crashes are happening, where the hot spots are. We usually call that a hot spot. And then also the crashes by type, which is, for example, angle crashes typically occur at intersections or driveways, rear end crashes, fixed objects, for example, running off the road and hitting the guardrail or some other fence or cattle guard, gate, that kind of thing. Side swipe, which are crashes that both can be on the same direction or in the opposite direction. Overturn rollover, and then animal crashes. And severity, we look at how severe they're, it's called the Carrasco scale, and I'll go into that just very briefly here in just a minute. Fatalities all the way down to property damage only crashes. So the total crashes by year, we looked at them. There were 252 crashes over this 5-year period, which is a crash frequency of about 50 per year. So you can see nearly one crash a week is happening within the study area. And you can see the pie chart here breaks it down by the year. You'll have these slides that has all the data on it, but you can kind of see in the earlier years, 2016, a higher proportion of them, 23%. 60 crashes, 19 in 2016, the blue chart, and then the orange, 22 crashes in 2017, and then as the pandemic hit, the crashes dropped a little bit. And then on the right chart, the crashes by location, as you can see, the 5 key intersections and how the crashes are distributed. The intersection of 62, 180, and 285 had the most, followed by Derrick Road and 285, and then the 285 New Mexico 31 Carrasco intersection, followed by the Old Cavern Highway and Derrick Road, and then 62, 180, and the Derrick Road is the last one. Wrong button here. The crashes by severity, you can see on the little small sliver on the left side, there were 3 fatalities during the study period, and they occurred. One of them at Derrick and US 285, one at Carrasco and 285. I believe the other one was 62, 180 and Derrick Road. And then the graph on the right, you can see the types, crashes by types. A lot of times when we get the crash data, there's not enough information to make a determination by type. So the blue is the ones that were not able to be classified per se. And then angle crashes were the next highest one, and rear end, followed by fixed object and side swipe, as you can see the data on down. And there were actually a couple of animal crashes as well. As part of the traffic data that we collected, we got new traffic data in 2022. We were out in May of this year, and we actually collected key tube counts, which is what we call average daily traffic. We put the tubes across and we collect the data for 48 hours and determine a daily rate. We also collected data at the intersections, which we call intersection turning movement counts, and that's actually where you're looking at we're counting at the peak hours, the AM and PM, to determine the movements and also the percentage trucks during that period, as well as speed data and the heavy commercial. And then we use that data to analyze the traffic and also to help us forecast what the usage and demand would be on the new route, as well as intersection level of service, and then travel time, of course, is a key component and an analysis measure that we look at. This chart right here shows a visual and aerial of where we counted. Of course, we counted at 62, 180 and US 285. We counted intersections at West Derrick Road and 62. In 62, we counted at West Derrick and the Old Cavern Highway, as well as 285 and East Derrick Road at that intersection. And we also got 2 counts on the key intersection, key roadways as well. I won't go into this. Is a real detailed table. I won't go into a lot of detail, but what I wanted to point out on this is we actually start delving in, driving into the data more and to determine what is the delay at the intersection and how do we, one of the key measurements is called level of service, and it ranges from A to F, and it's a measure of the delay. And so we start looking at these components to help us determine what the intersection's layout will actually ultimately look like. Here's a summary of the traffic. I wanted to point out there's 3 graphs here. The percentage of truck traffic, as you can see, ranges from 26 on up to 33% during our study period here in 2022. The 85th percentile speeds, as you can see, range from 29 at Derrick Road on up to 59 on 285. And 85th percentile is a measurement, it's an engineering term that we use. It's a measure of the total speed of vehicles at which the speed at which 85% of the traffic is traveling at or below. And then the total average daily traffic, as you can see, ranges from 1,280 on Carrasco all the way up to 15,000 on 285. And I realize this slide I put in, it's a little bit out of place, and we can come back to it after the presentation of the alternatives, but it's our forecast of how the alternatives are going to be used. What is going to be the demand on it? And so we have two general scenarios here, the alternatives to the southern and then the northern alternative to Derrick Road. And the peak hour demand is actually the forecasted estimate of how much traffic will use the route during the peak hour. The number to the left is the AM, and then the numbers in parentheses are the PM peak hour. And I will back over to you.
Thank you, Clay. So now we move into the alignments that we have identified. And we have 6 alignments that have been identified here. Alignment A1 is that one that you see in green. And that one goes from the existing Carrasco Road straight across from US 285 straight across to 62-180 on the west. So it will hit Del Paso Road. That's A1. And then A2, you can see that one in the red, and that one dips quite a ways down south. Then we have A3, which is just below A1, and that one is in the turquoise color, I believe. And then we have A4, I'm sorry, and that one is up above on Derrick Road. And then A5 is the orange alignment, which also coincides a little bit with A3. They're somewhat parallel for a ways there. So those are our 6 alignments that have been identified. And I will point out on this slide that if alignment, Carrasco Road will be closed at Porter Road, between Porter Road and Grandy, if alignment number 2 and alignment number 6 or alignment number 6 are selected. And access will be through Grandy, but that portion of Carrasco will be available only locally to the property owners that are there at the time. And it will continue to be a county maintained road. Okay, so in these slides, I'll go quickly through them. These are individual for each of the alignments. And this is just to let you know which are the property owners that are going to be affected. So I know it's small, but you can go onto the website and look and see if your property is one that's going to be affected. And we will provide also all of the sections and the properties that are going to be affected. That will all be online as well. And if you're here in person, we have that information here for you. So A1 is along Carrasco Road to Del Paso. And we do have 61 affected property owners there. On alignment number 2, this one is also along Carrasco for ways, and it dips down at Porter to the Southern Canal, crosses state of New Mexico. This is state land and BLM land, which is further down south to Skinner Road and then to 62-180. This is one of the ones where we would close Carrasco from Grandy to Porter Road, and we do have 22 affected property owners here. Oh, I'm sorry. That was alignment number 2 I was just talking about there. So on alignment number 3, this is also along Carrasco Road on the east side. It crosses New Mexico state land, then tying into the west loop on 62-180. We have 35 affected property owners on this one. Alignment A4, this one is along Derrick Road, the existing Derrick Road from US 285 to 62-180. And this alignment does feature limited right-of-way, and we do hit some residential areas here as well. And I would like to point out on this one that this one was selected based on input from the last public information meeting that we had, but this does break the loop. So to get back onto the loop, to maneuver to Derrick Road, you have to get off the fluid loop to go north, and then make, depending on whether you're on 62-180 or US 285, then you have to make either a left or right to get off of Derrick. So it does break the loop. It will possibly cause some signalization needs up there. So that fluidity will be interrupted with this one. On A5, alignment A5, this one is along Carrasco Road on the east. It does cross New Mexico state land and some private land. Then it ties into west loop alignment at 62-180. And on this one, we have 29 affected property owners. On alignment number 6, this one again is along Carrasco Road on the east side, goes to Porter Road, then it dips down from Porter Road, crosses state land, some private land, and ties into west loop alignment at 62-180. We will also go through some development in that area, some possibly almond properties, I think, on that one. On this one, we would close Carrasco from Grandy Road to Porter Road, and 23 property owners will be affected with that one. So what we're showing you on this one is all the alignments in this area. Where you see there the Southern Canal, that one, regardless of which alignment is chosen, we will need to do a bridge there to get us across that canal. Another possibility, and these are possibilities, is Grandy and Old Cavern Highway, possibly doing bridges there so we don't interrupt the flow of traffic that is on Grandy or Old Cavern. So we would go over those roads. So this is just a picture letting you know which types of bridges we could possibly use in those areas. There's a possibility of using a concrete box culvert or doing a bridge. This is what a concrete box culvert looks like. And this one is some bridges. Now, the reason I wanted to show you these bridges is because what you see on these bridges is they go through farmland that we found in Texas. And these bridges actually have branch brands on them. So something that the public or the ranchers out in the area might be interested in. And another interesting point to everyone out here, because of all the cattle ranching that we have out here, is concrete box culverts for cattle underpasses. So definitely taking these into consideration, and we'll need your input to let us know where these might be needed on your land. So the alignment evaluation matrix, I'm going to have Dave Maxwell talk to you about that a little bit and how we're going to start evaluating this. But please take note here on the second bullet that stakeholder and public input is important. So we will be needing your input on this here in just a bit.
Have we given them handouts as they come in?
Not yet.
We will.
We will, yeah.
Okay. I'm Dave Maxwell, and I want to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to compare the different alternatives that we presented. The reason that we have these meetings are because the county commissioners and the study team that they've hired to look at this, we want to hear your input. We want to hear what you have to say. Gabby's shown you 6 different alternatives that we've identified. And what we're going to do is compare those alternatives. Now, you should have received a handout tonight that I'll try and explain how we want to use that. But And also explain how we as engineers who are hired to be as objective as we can possibly be in a study like this, how we evaluate alternatives. I'll explain that. Gabby introduced the purpose and need, and a lot of it is related to that. How do each one of these alternatives compare in meeting that purpose and need? So, should we have a? Okay. Let me explain how we use this. This is how we compare each alternative to every one of the other alternatives. In the first, in the left-hand top corner up there, you'd be looking at alternative 1 versus alternative 2. And we've got the alternatives shown on the wall here that you can refer to. But in your opinion, which alternative is better? Number 1 or number 2? And then you go over to the second block and you compare alternative 1 to alternative 3, and so on until you get all the way to the bottom. Now, what we're going to do is we'd like for you to turn those back into us, and we're going to tally them up, and we'll show the results on the website later on. But when you're considering or comparing alternatives to each other, these are some of the things that we consider, shown over on the other side there. First of all, which one's better as far as relieving the heavy truck traffic through Carlsbad? Which one is going to divert most traffic, most of the truck traffic? Which one is going to improve the safety affecting the residents and travelers in the area? Which one's going to cost less in terms of both construction and future maintenance costs? Which one is going to reduce the travel time in case you wanted to bypass Carlsbad? Which alternative is going to have the least amount of travel time? Which one connects the major routes that are completed or planned? For example, the NMDOT is improving the intersection with US 285 and New Mexico 31 right now. We want to connect to that. We want to connect all the major traffic areas, traveling areas together in as much as we can without having to go one direction and come back and go another one and so on. Which ones have the greatest impact to property owners and utilities in the area? Which ones have impacts and constraints related to existing environmental, geotechnical, or drainage conditions? Some are going to have a greater impact than others. And then impacts on the current and future economic development in the region. How do they compare as far as that goes? And those are on the back of the handout that we gave you, these explanations here. So if you would, yes, we give a.
Yes, we'll start going through this exercise and I'll help you along. You can ask me questions if you have any questions on any of the routes and how that's going to work. So we'll work through this together. So for those of you that are here, you have the ballots. If you don't have a ballot, let me know and we'll get one to you. And online, Vince is going to be helping you through this process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any questions before we start this?
I know it seems complicated, but trust me, this process works. So the first comparison we're going to do is alignment 1 compared to alignment number 2. So based on the criteria you have on the ballot there or the suggestions, let us know between these two which one you like. Put a circle on the one that you like. And then we'll move on to the next one. Okay. I hope
Ask
you,
a Can I ask a question on these two alignments?
you bet.
So how is this impacting, Carlsbad is developing on National Parks Highway. So how's that taking account of these two alignments, or have you kind of worked with the city of Carlsbad with this first alignment and their development going on National Parks Highway?
I guess the question is how it's affecting development? It's planned for the city of Carlsbad.
Right, so we know that there's a big development south of Derrick Road that's planned. And so we want to try to stay south of that. I know whether it goes in, we don't know for sure at this point, but there are some preliminary plans for the development kind of between, I think it's just north maybe of the green Carrasco Road that's on the screen right now. But then there is some development as far as residential development south of that green line. And we're trying to keep it south of any major developments, or we're trying to keep the actual route, in my opinion, away from residences as much as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So it does. Thank you, Wes.
Yeah, and comparing alternatives, development has an effect on several of the factors we mentioned in comparing alternatives, not only in impacts to property owners, but in terms of safety. For example, you have more chances of having an accident in a developed area than if it's not developed.
Yeah, and in this case, alignment number 1, the green alignment, does go through a residential area. Alignment number 2 does not go through the residential area. That's just right where it says Carrasco, almost in the middle of your screen there. That there's a residential area there. So A2 doesn't really go through that as much, but it does go quite a bit south.
You got a question?
Where's the current city limits on National Parks Highway? Is it at the airport?
Yes.
Derrick Road?
Yes, sir.
So the question is, where is the city limits? And it's out by Derrick Road
On the south end of the airport.
on the south end of the airport. Okay, did everyone make their choice between these two? It doesn't mean you like either one of them, just between the two, pick the best. It doesn't mean that your vote's going to count for one, because you're going to be able to compare each alternative to each other. Okay, now we're comparing alternative number 1 to alternative number 2. So as you can see, alternative number 1 stays the same. It's Derrick Road.
1 versus 3, right?
I'm sorry, 1 versus 3. Alternative 1 stays the same as we just talked about. The only difference with number 3 is that it moves a little bit further north, just south of the port of entry. And if you look at alternative number 3, right where it starts to dip down, if you go over just a little bit to the left, there is a sinkhole there. It doesn't touch on the sinkhole right now, but it's pretty close to the sinkhole. Any questions on these two? Okay, now we're comparing alternative number 1. Again, the same one we've been looking at. This time we're comparing it to Derrick Road. Now this is the one that on Derrick Road, we will have to possibly do signal lights on 285, maybe on 62-180. We are coming in at a skew, so we would have to realign Derrick Road on both ends. And Derrick Road does go through some residential areas, which of course safety will diminish on Derrick Road if we go through here, possibly. I'm not going to say it will, it's a high possibility.
Any questions on that one?
Dave, you mentioned that part of your criteria when you're looking for is capture of heavy commercial vehicles, which ones would capture the most?
Yes.
So each of these routes have some kind of capture value?
They do, and I think Clay a while ago showed you the estimated peak hour volumes that would take each one. I think they, all of the 5 routes to the south take same peak traffic. Derrick Road is a little less than that. And so in terms of diversion, the roads to the south would divert more traffic away from the developed areas, Carlsbad.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it definitely did.
Okay. So now we're comparing again number 1 to number 5. And number 5 is somewhat similar to A3, except it does start to deviate closer to Grandy Road. It starts to deviate, or actually just to the west of Grandy Road, it starts to deviate to the south. Right after we cross the ditch, the canal. Okay, so now we're going to compare number 1 to number 6. And this is, again, number 1 stays the same. Number 6, we deviate at Porter Road, start going south, getting it away from the more populated areas. Go south, cross the canal, stay south, and come in close to south of the port of entry. Sorry, any questions on that one? Okay, now we're going to start comparing alignment number 2 to everything else. Here we're comparing alignment number 3 to alignment number 2. So we're no longer going to come straight across. Alignment number 1 we've already evaluated. Number 2 and number 3. Number 2 comes way down south. Alignment number 3 comes down south also and connects to 62180 south of the port of entry. And alignment number 2 deviates at Porter Road. Alignment number 3 deviates at Old Cavern Highway. Questions on this one? Okay, we're comparing number 2 to number 4. Again, number 4, we talked about it earlier, that's Derrick Road. And again, we will probably need some signalization at 285, possibly 62180. It does go through a residential area and it does break the loop, the fluid loop that we have, that the county has done. And alignment number 2 is the one we just discussed, and we'll continue discussing through the rest of this evaluation. That one deviates at Porter Road, goes south, and then goes way down south beyond the port of entry. This one is a long alignment, so construction costs would be high on this one. Now we compare number 2 to number 5. Again, number 2, the same one I've been describing. Number 5, that one starts to deviate between Grandy and Old Cavern after the canal, after we cross the canal to the west. And we come in just a little bit south of the port of entry. It is a shorter route. Construction costs would be lower than A2, for example. Questions on this one?
Now we compare A2 to A6. And they pretty much follow each other east of Old Cavern Highway. And after Old Cavern Highway to the west, they deviate. A6 becomes a much shorter route as A2 stays long to the south. And I just want to go back to A5 so you can see what the difference is between A5 and A6. Right now you're comparing A6 to A2.
So, just a question real quick. I noticed the A2, when it comes into 62-180, comes in at a lot better angle. That's not necessarily how A6 goes into 62-180 isn't necessarily how it would tie into, we can fix that angle. Is that right?
Yes, we can fix the A6 angle to come in at the desired 90 degree. So we'll make sure we comply with what the DOT has set as their preference on any intersections.
Go back through the subtleties between A5 and A6, they're so close. What's in the details, the difference?
Go to the last slide, maybe.
I'm sorry, my clicker stopped working. Hold on.
Hang on, we have some people that are wanting to ask questions, but I got them muted. So we can go in and mute them real quick.
Can I get this?
So basically, I think, Francisco, from what I saw, A5, starting back to the east, A6 kind of starts slanting back towards the south a little bit sooner, right after Porter Road. I think A5 came across further before it started diving back south.
Yes, and I'll get to those in just a minute. I'll show them to you, and then I can show you all the alignments together again in a bit.
She'll bring it up for you.
Can,
Yeah,
is he hearing?
He's working now.
Okay, so there's A6 and A5, Francisco.
Okay,
Can we go to slide 15?
Which one was slide 15? I'm sorry.
Show last one.
That one?
Actually, it shows 5 versus 6, and it would be right together.
Yes, we'll do that at the end.
So you'll be able to see a difference, 5 and 6 later, I guess.
Yes, we'll be able to compare 5 to 6. Any other questions?
Got one that's trying to ask online.
Okay. We have someone trying to ask a question online. You're unmuted.
You have to accept. Right. So what happens when we send in a request, when they have to accept that request?
Okay, whoever's trying to speak, accept the request to unmute.
And if you can't unmute for some reason, you can go into the chat and type in your question, and then I'd be glad to go ahead and read it out.
Okay, so now we're going to start comparing A3 to what's left. So A3 is going to stay the same throughout right now. That's the one that comes across, dips down at Old Cavern Highway, and then it ties in south of the port of entry. So we're comparing A3 to A4, which is Derrick Road, which I've already spoken about the characteristics of Derrick Road. I can repeat them if you need me to. But between these two, pick an alignment. Any questions on this one? Okay, here we have A3. compared to A5, and you can see they're pretty close.
Gabby?
Yes.
Okay, there's a question on the chat. And it's, the question is, can you please speak on what considerations are being made for operators in the area? And maybe a clarification of operators would be the traveling public, I would think. Okay, also mentions via pipelines, wells, etc.
Okay, we're not at that point yet, but we're definitely going to coordinate with anyone that has pipelines or any of the operators in the area, the utility companies and other stakeholders. Once we start looking at the alignments, people give us input. That will definitely be taken into consideration. We are looking for fatal flaws too. Like we mentioned earlier, we see a sinkhole that might interfere with one of these alignments. We definitely don't want to go over sinkholes if possible. So we'll start doing a fatal flaw analysis. And if there's an area that we definitely cannot go through, we won't do that. And we'll coordinate with the utility companies. So we are going to take consideration when we move further along in the study. But right now it's hard to take consideration because there's 6 alignments. So we can investigate all alignments feasibly, but when we cut it down to 1 or 2 alignments, we'll definitely work with everyone, and those will be dynamic. So we may pick an alignment, but if we have to change that alignment a little bit, we certainly will go down that path. Did that answer the question?
It looks like it did, Gabby.
Okay. So now we're comparing alignment 3 to alignment number 6. So you can see alignment number 6 deviates at Porter, goes down a bit, and they pretty much touch base at the same point. On 62-180.
Gabby, there's a question again on the chat regarding the considerations for the operators in the area. Will that cost be on the operator or the county?
I would say that would depend on what it ends up being. Most of the time, if you're within the right of way of the municipality or the entity, then the cost of moving that line or deepening that line falls back to the operator.
But if it falls within new right of way that we're going to purchase, that typically falls on the county.
Okay. There's another question that came in. Do you have a time frame for when that phase of working with operators, like for instance with the oil, the gas, and possibly with electric lines?
Yes, at the end, I'll show you the schedule. That will typically happen once we pick an alternative. So we still have to go through, you know, we're doing this right now. You're giving us your input on it. We're going to have to go through a matrix and select the alternative that is most feasible and that the county agrees with. And you know, we still have to go through several iterations of selecting. Once we come up with that alternative, we'll start working with all the operators, and we'll have the schedule here at the end.
And one more question, where is the miles measured from?
The miles that we're measuring, it's about 8 miles. We start over at the intersection of Carrasco Road and 285, right there at that intersection with New Mexico 31 as well there. And it goes west to 62-180. So some of these, you can see the miles there. But that's what's encompassed, everything between 62-180 and US 285 New Mexico 31.
And then another question, so each one has the same starting point as far as miles, except for A4?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, no more questions at this point.
Okay, so now let's compare number 5 to the other alternatives. So here is number 5 that you've seen in the others, compared to alternative number 4, which is Derrick Road. Any questions on this one?
There's another-
Abby, there's a question. Yeah, question is, what is the width of the easement? I have heard 120 feet.
We are going to try and work with 120 feet, which is the same width that we have on another portion of the loop, which is the southeast loop. I believe we're working with 120 feet there as well. And we will have, it's going to be a 2-lane road at this point, 1 lane in each direction with 8-foot shoulders.
The lanes are 12 feet.
No more.
Yes, and the lanes are 12 feet.
Another question that came in the chat, will existing pipelines be covered or will they need additional work?
Will existing what?
Pipelines.
Pipeline. Will existing pipelines be covered or will they need additional work?
That'll depend on the company, because it depends on our safety, what our safety protocols are from company to company.
Yeah, one of the comments I have is that it will depend on the company, but I'm not sure that the county is going to cover that. It does depend on the company.
Right, and it'll depend on, like, Devon has a pipeline that's gonna cross this road, and I feel like that's gonna be on Devon, because it's on the existing road. Now, we get outside of the right of way, if we have to move things, then we'll visit with the company about, or with the county about that,
Mhm.
about prices and stuff, but like Wes just said, if it's in the existing right of way, that's gonna be on the oil and gas company to move that pipeline.
Correct.
Or cover it, deepen it, whatever we have to do to suffice our safety protocols. I know where they're going with this, because they've had some problems in the past with pipelines underneath roads blowing up, leaking, that kind of thing. But most of the oil field companies, we have a 36-inch or 48-inch rule that we have to drop those lines to that point. And
Right.
like this area, it's gonna be not an issue, because they're already that deep, because they're under farmland, and we drop them extra deep, so the farmers don't catch up with their
With their
plows and
equipment.
stuff. Yeah, so, I mean, I think it's gonna be a lot less of an issue than
But will it be required to be bored?
under the road. We may have to, yeah,
Existing line,
yeah, it depends on what it is, but yeah,
case?
yeah. And then, yeah, they'll case them. So if you have a 24-inch line, we're probably gonna case it with 36-inch, slide it through there. And
So I think the boring question also, though, if we're gonna be tearing that road up, I don't know that we would require a bore. Because we're already going in, it's not like we've got the road built and then you're trying to get, so we would wanna work with the company and say, look, we're gonna tear this up anyways. While we got it tore up, you don't have to bore it, just go in, dig it, get it lowered. Right. But yeah, in my opinion, casing them is the best way to go.
The only other issue I would think if you do have to bore is you're gonna start getting into other people's. But if you're 60 feet from the center line on each side, I would think that we could back the bore up far enough to stay within the right of way before.
I think you'd be all right, you'd be able to stay in the right of way.
Were you able to capture that, Vince?
Yes.
Okay.
Is 4 feet enough?
Is 4 feet enough? At this point, I don't know that we can answer that question. It depends on how we're,
It's all in compaction rate. I mean, really what it is, and then if you case it and compact it, 4 feet is gonna be way more than
typically it would be. I just don't know what the alignment of the roadway is going to do vertically
that. Correct.
on the vertical alignment, but
And yeah, when you get that road profile built, then you'll know what your compaction rates have to be.
Yeah.
And we'll know where we need to put our lines.
exactly. Typically, we're not going to be looking to sink a road. We're not going to go down in elevation. So I don't see that that should be an issue, but that's a question we can answer once we get an alignment, do a survey and see what the vertical elevations are doing.
Something else to think about too. I mean, casing anything is good, but I doubt that I know Devin for sure is not gonna wanna have a poly line. And I know all of our lines in this area that this road may affect wherever it ends up. All those lines are steel lines anyway. They're not poly lines.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Any more questions? Okay. So now we're comparing A4 to A6. A4 again goes through residential area. A6, we're trying to keep it away from residential area as much as possible. And keep it, one of the things we're doing here too, with a lot of these alignments that go to the south is keep them on state land so that they don't affect private property owners.
Is Francisco still on?
I am.
Okay, just to go back to your development question and in talking with the city of Carlsbad, the other thing that we're trying to make sure we adhere to is if there's gonna be any expansion of the airport. So, like, for example, A6 gets us kind of further away. That way, if they do need to extend those runways or whatever, it kind of gives them some room there.
Okay.
And that was just a concern of the city, making sure that they have, we don't have to come back in and move the road, that there's expansion of the airport.
Then talk about development. I'm not super familiar with the city, inside the city limits of Carlsbad. So off of Old Cavern Highway, is that all residential? I mean, I know you can't zoom in on this, and I was gonna go on Google Earth, but is that developed as residential, or is it just the train that I'm seeing here? Are those actual houses on Old Cavern Highway?
There are houses north of A6.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot though. I think that's more maybe some brush. That's kind of the black spots you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not fully developed in there.
Okay.
But there are some. I believe.
There is.
Yes. Okay. So now I believe this is our last comparison here. It's A5 to A6. This is the one you were asking about earlier.
Yes.
The difference between these two is A5 does keep us a little bit closer to some of the residences. A6 takes us a little bit further south from the residences.
Do those two alignments keep you on state land and BLM
Yes.
or no? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we stay on state land here. Towards the 62-180, we do go across an investment company, Allman Investments, but there isn't any development out there.
Okay.
So basically, once you get up, I don't know if you're following the purple line from 62, 180, and it makes that first bend kind of to the north. And then there's kind of a slight bend. That from there, from that slight bend to 62, 180 is private. And then from there all the way to just before the canal is state. And then it gets into private right before the canal, and then crossing into the farms is private. Back up to the original alignment of Carrasco.
Any online questions? No, okay. Okay, so now we're at the schedule. So in February, we identified existing the existing conditions that we had out there. And we had a meeting in March and April. We had some meetings then. Since that time, we've established the purpose and need and identified the potential alternatives early this month. Actually, we did it last month, and now we're having the meeting. So we're ahead on conducting our second stakeholder and public meeting. That was expected in November. We're having it now since we didn't want to wait on this. We're actually trying to get some federal funding on that. So we're trying to move it along a bit faster so we can capture some federal funding. We'll be doing the evaluation of alternatives next month. And then we'll be preparing the Phase A/B report next year. So once we get to the evaluation of alternatives, we'll do a selection. And at that point, we'll know who's getting affected and how deeply they're getting affected. And we'll bring it back to the stakeholders and the public for their input. Okay, any questions? I guess you guys have figured this out, you that are online. So questions, comments from the people here and from people online, we're open for that.
I would make a comment. I've said it to Wes before, I've said it to the county commissioners, we've gotta have an overpass 131 and 285. I know it's millions of dollars, I know it's tying state road into county road, it's just has to be done. I drive that road every day, my kids drive that road every day. Putting a light there is not gonna work, your fatality rate's gonna go way up. I mean, I've scraped way too many people off that road to tell you how bad that is. The box culverts for the cattle crossing, that's a good idea. All of these southern routes are gonna ruin one of Lisa Ogden's pastures. And so taking that into consideration, I appreciate that. And so, but I understand things have to improve, but the overpasses, they've gotta happen. I'm sorry.
And your name is, sir?
Nathan Sherman.
Okay, let me go back to all of the alternatives so you can see them all together. There we go. Any online comments?
No, there's none at this time, Gabby.
Okay. Well, we can tally up the votes that we have here. I don't know if you tallied up the votes that you have, if people online were voting. If you didn't get to vote and you need to speak to us individually, you're more than welcome to contact Matt. He will put you in contact with us. Let me put that information on the screen for the online folks. And we will discuss your voting and your vote will count.
Gabby, there's a comment that just came in over the chat
Okay,
mentioning that A6 mileage is off.
okay, we'll check on that then.
No other comments at this time?
Thank you, online folks. That concludes our meeting. We will be taking your comments till August 12th. You can submit them there to Matt Mathis, and we'll make it a matter of public record and address your comments as well. Thank you.
Appreciate the information.
Yeah.
Very much. You guys,
Yeah,
if you have any
Someone
questions,
said
I'll
I
reach
couldn't
out.
hear, I was still having a
noticed
6
something.
PM meeting. I'm
Yes.
trying to say yes.
They're gonna run you. Mr. Chairman, thanks for showing up.
Thank
You want to stick around and see who won?
you. Are you gonna tell it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have all